The giant meeting hall on Galactic Station 7 was full of angry voices. Aliens from dozens of different worlds sat in their special chairs, all talking at once. Their skin colors ranged from blue to green to silver, and some had tentacles instead of arms. But they all shared one thing. They were very upset. Dae-ho Kim stood at the center of the room. He was a human, which made him look very small compared to the huge aliens around him. His black hair was neat, and he wore the simple blue uniform of Earth's diplomatic service. In his hands, he held a single piece of paper that would change. "Everything! Order! Order!" shouted the tall alien who ran the meeting. His name was something humans could not say properly, so they called him Speaker Vex. He had 4 arms and skin like purple metal. "The human ambassador will speak now." Dae-ho looked around the room. He had worked in this place for 20 years. He had made friends here. He had helped solve wars and saved billions of lives. But today, all of that would end. "Thank you, Speaker." "Vex," Dae-ho said. His voice was calm, but inside his heart was beating fast. "I am here to read an official message from the United Earth government." The room became quiet. Some aliens leaned forward in their seats. Others made worried sounds. Dae-ho cleared his throat and began to read. After 300 years of service to the Galactic Council, humanity officially withdraws from all galactic institutions. We will honor our current contracts until they end, but we will not make new ones. All human citizens will return to Earth space within 1 year. This decision is final. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then the room exploded with noise. "Impossible!" screamed a Zenthari delegate. The Zenthari looked like giant lizards that walked on 2 legs. "Humans cannot just leave. You have duties." "Who will fix our machines?" asked a worried Vorthak. The Vorthak were like huge bugs with too many eyes. "Humans know all the secrets." "This is a joke, right?" laughed a Krell general. The Krell were warriors who looked like bears made of rock. "Humans are too weak to survive alone." Dae-ho waited for the noise to die down. Then he spoke again. "We are not joking. For 3 centuries, humans have built your cities, fixed your problems, and stopped your wars. We have done this work because we believed in working together. But we have learned something important. You do not see us as partners. You see us as servants." Speaker Vex stood up. His 4 arms waved in the air. "Ambassador Kim, this is crazy talk. Humans are valued members of our community, are we?" Dae-ho asked. "When the Zenthari Empire wanted to build their new capital city, who designed it?" "Humans. When the Vorthak farms started failing, who saved them?" "Humans. When the Krell and the Aldorians went to war, who made peace?" "Humans." But in all the history books, all the credit goes to alien leaders. Human names are forgotten. The room was getting quieter now. Some aliens looked uncomfortable. Dae-ho continued. "Last month, the Council voted on the new trade laws. Every human suggestion was ignored. The month before, when we warned about problems with the hyperspace network, you said we were being too careful. When human colonies asked for help after the storms on Kepler-4, you said it was not important enough for Council attention." "But humans are good at these things," protested a Zenthari. "It is your natural talent." "That is exactly the problem," Dae-ho said. "You think we do this work because it is easy for us. You think we are just naturally good servants. But we are not servants. We are people. We have our own dreams and goals, and we are tired of being taken for granted." A small green alien named Counselor Rix stood up. The Rix were known for being smart and fair. "Ambassador Kim, surely we can discuss this. What do humans want? More money? Better trade deals? A bigger voice in the council?" Dae-ho shook his head. "It is too late for that. We offered those things many times. You always said maybe later, or next year, or after the current crisis was over. But there is always another crisis. There is always a reason why human needs come last." "You cannot abandon your responsibilities," shouted the Krell general. "Lives depend on human work." "And that is exactly why we must leave," Dae-ho said. "As long as you believe you cannot survive without us, you will never learn to respect us. You will always see us as the people who fix your problems while you take the credit." Speaker Vex was getting angry now. His purple skin was turning darker. This is blackmail. You are threatening innocent people. No, Daeho said firmly. We are keeping our promises. Every human will finish their current job before leaving. We will give you all the instruction manuals and computer files you need. We will train alien replacements if you want. But after that, you are on your own. But you need us too, said the Zenthari delegate. Earth is just one small system. You need galactic trade to survive. Daeho smiled for the first time that day. Do we? For 300 years, humans have been so busy helping everyone else that we never had time to develop our own worlds properly. Maybe it is time to see what we can do when we focus on ourselves. The aliens started arguing among themselves. Some said humans were being foolish. Others worried about what would happen to their own worlds. A few wise ones began to realize that maybe they had been unfair to humans. But Daeho was not finished. There is one more thing. Some of you are probably thinking you can force us to stay. Let me be very clear. Any attempt to stop human ships from leaving will be considered an act of war. And I promise you, you do not want to find out what 3 centuries of pent-up frustration looks like when humans finally get angry. That made the room very quiet, very quickly. Speaker Vex tried one last time. Ambassador Kim, please reconsider. The galaxy needs humanity. Maybe, Daeho said, but humanity needs respect. And since we cannot get that here, we will find it somewhere else. He put the paper back in his pocket. Good luck. You are going to need it. As Daeho walked out of the meeting hall, he could hear the aliens still arguing behind him. Some were angry, some were scared, some were finally starting to understand what they had lost. Back on Earth, millions of humans were already packing their things. Ships were being loaded with families, tools, and 3 centuries of knowledge. It was the biggest move in human history, and it was going to change everything. Bo-Ram Lee was supervising the shutdown of the hyperspace relay station at Kepler Junction. The station was huge, with spinning rings and glowing energy cores. It had taken humans 50 years to build it, and it connected 17 different star systems. Now, Bo-Ram was taking it apart, piece by piece. Are you sure about this? Asked Texka, her Vorthak assistant. Texka had worked with Bo-Ram for 10 years and considered her a friend. Bo-Ram looked up from her computer screen. I am sure. This technology belongs to humanity. We built it, we paid for it, and we are taking it with us. But the trade routes, Texka said. Without this station, goods cannot move between systems. Then you will have to build your own station, Bo-Ram said. She was not being mean, just practical. All the plans are in the computer files we are leaving behind. On the other side of the galaxy, Captain Woojin Park was loading the last of the human colonists onto his ship. The planet below had been a dusty, dead world when humans first arrived. Now it was green and beautiful, with cities and farms that fed billions of aliens across 3 star systems. This feels wrong, said his first officer, a young woman named Sora. We are abandoning everything our grandparents built. Woojin looked down at the planet one last time. No, Sora. We are not abandoning it. We are showing them what it is. Worth. Sometimes the only way to make someone appreciate what they have is to take it away. As the human ships began their long journey home, the aliens were left to figure out what came next. Many of them still believed it would be easy. After all, how hard could it be to replace a bunch of humans? They were about to find out. 6 months had passed since the last human ship left Galactic Station 7. At first, most aliens thought they were doing fine without humans. The stations kept running, the lights stayed on, and trade continued. But slowly, small problems began to appear. Taejun Choi had been the head of Galactic Infrastructure Maintenance for 30 years before he left with the other humans. He was a quiet man who never caused trouble, but he knew every wire, every pipe, and every computer chip in the galactic network better than anyone else. When he left, he made sure to leave behind thick books full of instructions and detailed computer files explaining how everything worked. The aliens thought this would be enough. They were wrong. On Station 12, deep in Vorthak space, a problem started small. The water recycling system began making a strange noise. According to Taejun's manual, this meant the filters needed to be changed. The Vorthak maintenance crew found the right filters and installed them exactly as the instructions said. The noise stopped for 2 days, then came back even louder. Zixra was the new head of maintenance for the station. He had 6 arms and compound, eyes that could see in many different colors. He was very smart and had studied human engineering for years, but when he looked at the water system, he felt confused. The manual says the filters should last for 6 months, Zixra told his crew. We just changed them 2 days ago. His assistant, a young Vorthak named Keklo, crawled inside the machine to look closer. The filters are clean, Keklo called out. But there is something else wrong. The flow rate is not matching the numbers in the manual. Zixra checked the computer readings again. Everything looked normal according to the human instructions, but the machine was clearly not working right. He decided to call other stations to see if they were having similar problems. The answer was yes. Station after station reported small issues that the human manuals could not solve. Machines that should work perfectly were acting strange. Systems that had run smoothly for decades were now unreliable. What the aliens did not understand was that Taijun and other human engineers had not just followed the instruction books. They had made thousands of small changes and improvements over the years. When a machine started making noise, they would adjust it slightly. When a system ran too hot, they would reroute the cooling. When computer programs had bugs, they would write small fixes. None of these changes were written down anywhere. They were just part of the daily work that humans did. The aliens called it human intuition, but it was really just experience and care. The humans had treated the galactic infrastructure like a living thing that needed constant attention. The aliens treated it like a machine that should work perfectly all the time. Ne Yuan Song had managed the protein synthesis facilities on Terminus 7 for 15 years. The planet was not good for growing food, so the billions of aliens who lived there depended on artificial protein made in huge factories. Naeun had learned every detail of the process, from the temperature of the growth, tanks to the timing of the chemical reactions. When she left, she trained a team of Vorthak scientists to take over. They were smart and eager to learn. Naeun spent 3 months teaching them everything she could. She wrote detailed procedures and made sure they understood each step. The Vorthak were confident they could handle the job. For 4 months, everything went well. The protein factories produced exactly the right amount of food, and it all tested safe and healthy. The Vorthak scientists were proud of their success. They even made small improvements to make the process more efficient. Then the first batch of toxic protein was discovered. It happened on a Tuesday morning. Quality Control Officer Helka was running the daily safety tests when her computer started flashing red warnings. The protein from Factory 7 was full of dangerous chemicals that could kill anyone who ate it. Helka immediately shut down the factory and called her supervisor, Vorix. Vorix had been Na-Yun's best student, and he knew the protein process better than any other Vorthak. "How is this possible?" Vorix asked as he stared at the test results. "We followed every procedure exactly. The temperatures were correct, the timing was perfect, the chemical mixtures were precisely measured." Helka checked the factory records. "Everything shows normal operations for the past week. No alarms, no unusual readings. The computers say the protein should be perfectly safe." But it was not safe. When they tested older samples, they found that the protein had been slowly getting more toxic for days. The computer systems had not detected the problem because the changes were too small and gradual. Na-Yun would have noticed. She had a habit of tasting tiny samples of each batch, not because it was required, but because she could detect problems with her tongue before any machine could measure them. She had learned to recognize the subtle signs that meant something was going wrong. The Vorthak had followed the official procedures perfectly, but they had missed the unofficial knowledge that only came from years of experience. The toxic protein was already being shipped to 12 different worlds. By the time they caught the problem, thousands of aliens had eaten it. Most got sick. Some died. The Vorthak Collective tried to keep the news quiet, but word spread quickly through the Galactic Communication Network. In the Zenthari Empire, they were having their own crisis. The flagship of their space fleet, the Pride of Zenthar, was stuck in orbit around their capital world. The ship was enormous, bigger than most cities, and it was supposed to be the symbol of Zenthari power. Minho Jiang had been the chief engineer of the Pride of Zenthar for 40 years. He was an old man who spoke quietly and never bragged about his work, but he knew that ship better than its own captain. The quantum engines were his specialty, and he had made countless small adjustments over the years to keep them running smoothly. When Minho left, he trained a team of Zenthari engineers to replace him. He showed them how to read the engine displays, how to adjust the power flow, and how to perform routine maintenance. He even left behind a complete technical manual that he had written himself. The Zenthari engineers were proud warriors who had studied at the best technical schools in the galaxy. They were confident they could maintain one ship, even if it was a complicated one. For 2 months, everything seemed fine. The engines ran normally, and the ship performed all its duties. The Zenthari High Command was pleased. They even boasted that they no longer needed human help to maintain their most advanced technology. Then, during a routine patrol, something went wrong. Chief Engineer Korthak was monitoring the engines when alarms started going off all over the control room. Red lights flashed, and the computer screens filled with error messages he had never seen before. "Engine 3 is overheating," shouted his assistant. "Engine 5 shows power fluctuations," called another technician. Korthak frantically checked Minho's manual, but the symptoms did not match any of the problems described in the book. The engines were failing in a way that should have been impossible. "Shut down all engines," Korthak ordered. The great ship shuddered and went silent. They were now drifting helplessly in space, unable to move. The pride of Zenthar, the symbol of Zenthari strength, had become a very expensive piece of space junk. Emergency teams tried for weeks to fix the problem. They brought in the best Zenthari engineers from across the Empire. They even hired expensive consultants from other species. Nothing worked. The engines would start up for a few minutes, then fail again in new and confusing ways. What they did not know was that Minho had been dealing with a gradual degradation in the engine cores for years. The quantum field generators were slowly wearing out, but Minho had learned to compensate by making tiny adjustments to the power flow every few hours. He did it so naturally that he never thought to mention it in his training sessions. The engines needed constant human attention, but the humans were gone. News of these failures spread quickly through the galaxy. Other species began to check their own human-built systems more carefully. They found problems everywhere. Hydroponics gardens that were producing less food, communication networks that were dropping more calls, transportation systems that were running slower and less efficiently. The Galactic Council called an emergency meeting. Speaker Vex looked tired and worried as he addressed the assembled delegates. "We are facing some technical difficulties," he admitted. "But these are temporary problems. We are learning to manage our systems without human assistance. It will take time, but we will succeed." Some delegates were not convinced. Councillor Rix of the Green People stood up to speak. "Perhaps we should consider asking the humans to return. Surely we can reach some kind of agreement." "Absolutely not!" roared General Korth of the Krell Federation. "We will not beg for help from those arrogant humans. We managed fine before they came to the galaxy, and we will manage fine now that they are gone." "But the hyperspace network is becoming unreliable," worried Delegate Silka of the Traders Union. "My ships are experiencing more delays and routing problems every week." "Then we will fix it ourselves," General Korth declared. "The Krell have the finest engineers in the galaxy. We will improve these human systems and make them work even better." Speaker Vex nodded. "General Korth is right. We must solve these problems ourselves. To do otherwise would prove that humans were right when they called us to. 2 years after humanity left the galactic stage, the small problems had become big disasters. What started as minor technical issues had grown into a crisis that threatened the entire galactic civilization. The aliens discovered that everything was connected in ways they had never understood. The hyperspace relay network was the backbone of galactic society. It allowed ships to travel between star systems in days instead of years. For 3 centuries, it had worked perfectly under human management, but now, under Krell military engineers, it was falling apart. General Korth had been confident that Krell engineering could improve the human-built system. The Krell were warriors who built things to last. Their weapons could survive planet-destroying explosions, and their armor could stop any attack. Surely they could handle a simple communication network. But the hyperspace network was not simple. It was made up of thousands of relay stations scattered across the galaxy. each one carefully, positioned to create a web of connected jump points. The stations had to work together perfectly, timing their signals down to tiny fractions of a second. Human engineers had designed the system to be flexible. When one station went offline, the others would automatically adjust to keep the network running. When solar flares or cosmic storms interfered with signals, the system would find new paths around the problem. It was like a living thing that could adapt to changing conditions. The Krell did not understand this flexibility. To them, it looked like weakness. They believed in strong, simple solutions. When they found that some relay stations were using different signal frequencies than others, they fixed it by making all stations use the same frequency. When they discovered that some stations were running at lower power levels, they boosted all of them to maximum strength. These changes worked for a few weeks. The network seemed more powerful and efficient. The Krell engineers were proud of their improvements. General Korth announced that they had made the hyperspace network stronger than ever before. Then the cascade failures began. It started at Relay Station 347, deep in the Centauri sector. The station had been one of the oldest in the network, and human engineers had carefully tuned it to work with the unique magnetic fields of nearby stars. When the Krell boosted its power and changed its frequency, the station began interfering with its neighbors. Station 347 sent out a signal that was too strong. Station 348 received the signal and tried to compensate, but its new programming could not handle the unexpected power levels. It sent out an error signal to Station 349, which passed the error along to Station 350. Within hours, 17 stations in the Centauri sector had gone offline. Ships that were traveling through hyperspace suddenly found themselves thrown back into normal space, lost and confused. Some ships were lucky and emerged near friendly planets. Others found themselves drifting in empty space, far from any help. The Trade Wind, a cargo ship carrying medical supplies to the Vorthak colonies, was one of the unlucky ones. Captain Helko and his crew suddenly found themselves floating in the void between star systems with no way to call for help and no idea where they were. "How far are we from the nearest planet?" asked Navigator Pikra, studying her star charts with growing worry. "At least 6 months at full speed," Captain Helko replied. "And we only have food for 3 weeks. They were not the only ones in trouble." Across the galaxy, hundreds of ships were stranded in space. The Galactic Emergency Response Network, which humans had built to handle exactly this kind of crisis, tried to coordinate rescue efforts. But without humans to run it, the network was slow and confused. The response teams that did get organized found more problems waiting for them. Many of the stranded ships were carrying vital supplies. Food shipments rotted in space while planets went hungry. Medical supplies spoiled while hospitals ran out of medicine. Raw materials for factories drifted uselessly between the stars while production lines shut down. But the hyperspace crisis was only the beginning. The breakdown of the transportation network triggered problems in every other system that depended on it. Hyojin Ko had once managed the Galactic Emergency Response Network from her office on Station Central. She had been the person who coordinated rescue operations across the entire galaxy, making sure that help reached people who needed it as quickly as possible. She had worked with teams of doctors, engineers, and pilots who could respond to any crisis within hours. Now Hyojin was back on Earth, working as a teacher at the Seoul Space Academy. She watched the galactic news reports with growing concern. The emergency response to the hyperspace crisis was chaotic and slow. Ships were being sent to the wrong locations. Rescue teams were arriving too late. Some stranded crews were never found at all. "They do not understand how to coordinate large operations," she told her students during a lecture about crisis management. "They think that if you just send enough ships and people, everything will work out. But without proper organization and communication, more resources just means more confusion." The worst disaster came when the Andorian plague broke out on 3 separate worlds at the same time. The plague was a fast-spreading disease that could kill entire populations within weeks. For centuries, human-led medical teams had contained dozens of plague outbreaks before they could spread. The protocol was simple but required perfect timing. As soon as a plague was detected, medical ships would rush to the infected worlds with vaccines and treatment supplies. Quarantine barriers would be set up to prevent ships from leaving the infected systems. Emergency medical teams would work around the clock to treat the sick and prevent the disease from spreading. But the hyperspace network was not working properly. Medical ships got lost or delayed. Quarantine barriers had gaps because coordination between different species' fleets broke down. The emergency medical teams that did arrive found that their equipment was not working correctly because the maintenance manuals humans had left behind did not cover all the problems they encountered. On the world of Therion 5, Dr. Velka watched helplessly as the plague spread through the capital city. She was one of the galaxy's best doctors, but she did not have the right medicines or equipment to fight the disease. "We need the human antiviral compounds," she told the planetary governor. "Our medicines are not strong enough." "The humans left behind the formulas," the governor replied. "Our scientists can make them." But when the local scientists tried to recreate the human medicines, they made mistakes. The chemical processes that looked simple on paper turned out to be incredibly difficult in practice. Small errors in temperature or timing made the difference between life-saving medicine and useless powder. Dr. Velka worked for days without sleep, trying to save as many patients as she could with the limited supplies she had. But it was not enough. The plague spread to other cities, then to other worlds. Within 6 months, billions of aliens had died from a disease that humans had learned to cure decades ago. The Galactic Council was in chaos. Emergency sessions were called every day, but the delegates spent most of their time arguing about who was to blame for the various crises. The Zenthari blamed the Vorthak for the food shortages. The Vorthak blamed the Krell for the hyperspace failures. The Krell blamed everyone else for not being strong enough to handle simple problems. Young Su Han had once been the director of Galactic Diplomatic Services. His job had been to prevent exactly this kind of breakdown in cooperation between species. He had spent decades learning how to help different alien cultures work together despite their very different ways of thinking. Now he was living quietly on Earth, writing his memoirs. In his book, he described the meeting where he had warned the Galactic Council about what would happen if humans left. "I told them that without human mediation, old conflicts would resurface within 5 years," he wrote. "I said that we had become the glue-holding galactic civilization together, even though they did not realize it. They laughed at me then. I wonder if they are laughing now." The old conflicts were indeed returning. The Zenthari Empire began accusing the Vorthak Collective of deliberately contaminating food supplies. The Vorthak claimed that the Zenthari were trying to steal their agricultural technology. The Krell Federation offered to keep the peace by sending military fleets to both Zenthari and Vorthak space. None of them wanted war, but they were all scared and angry. When people are scared and angry, they often do stupid things. Border patrols became more aggressive. Trade disputes turned into diplomatic incidents. Small accidents were seen as deliberate attacks. The breaking point came when a Zenthari cargo ship accidentally collided with a Vorthak space station. It was clearly an accident. The ship's navigation systems had malfunctioned because of the hyperspace network problems. But both sides were already suspicious of each other. The Vorthak accused the Zenthari of attacking their civilians. The Zenthari claimed the Vorthak had sabotaged their ship. Within days, both sides had mobilized their fleets. Other species chose sides or tried to stay neutral. The galaxy was sliding toward the first major war in 300 years. Desperate to avoid disaster, some alien leaders finally swallowed their pride. A group of moderate delegates secretly sent envoys to Earth. They arrived with formal apologies and generous offers, better trade agreements, territorial concessions, even access. By the 4th year after humanity's departure, galactic civilization was crumbling. The Zenthari Empire had broken apart into 17 different factions, each claiming to be the rightful government. The Vorthak Collective's unified mind had fractured under the stress of managing failing systems across hundreds of worlds. The Krell Federation was fighting 3 separate civil wars while trying to maintain order on planets where their technology no longer worked properly. What made everything worse was that the aliens' attempts to replace human technology had failed spectacularly. The Krell's improved hyperspace network was completely broken. The Vorthak's new food production systems poisoned more people than they fed. The Zenthari's advanced starship engines exploded if anyone tried to start them. The problem was not that alien engineers were stupid. Many of them were brilliant scientists who understood complex theories that humans had never even imagined. But they did not understand how to make things work in the real world. They could design perfect systems on paper, but they could not build machines that would keep running when something unexpected happened. Sun Young Kim had been one of humanity's greatest engineers. She had designed the quantum processing cores that powered the galactic communication network. These cores were marvels of human ingenuity, small devices that could process more information than entire alien computer centers. When Sun Young left the galaxy, she had been careful to protect her work. The processing cores contained security, systems that would shut them down if anyone tried to copy them without proper authorization. Only humans knew the secret codes needed to build new cores or repair damaged ones. The aliens discovered this the hard way when they tried to reverse engineer the quantum cores. Dr. Korth Ven was the Krell Federation's best computer scientist. He had studied human technology for decades and believed he understood how the cores worked. His team spent months carefully taking apart one of the cores, mapping every circuit and analyzing every component. When they tried to build a copy, it seemed to work perfectly for about 10 minutes. Then it started smoking and caught fire. They tried again with better materials and more careful construction. The second copy lasted 20 minutes before it exploded, destroying half their laboratory. There must be hidden components we are missing, Dr. Korth Ven told his frustrated team. Some kind of secret technology that humans built into these devices, but there were no secret components. The quantum cores were protected by something much simpler and more effective. They were designed to recognize unauthorized copying attempts and self-destruct. Sun Young had learned from centuries of human experience with theft and piracy. She had built her security systems to be invisible and impossible to bypass without the proper codes. Every alien attempt to copy human technology ended the same way. Hyperspace drives that tore themselves apart, medical scanners that gave false readings, environmental systems that flooded buildings with poisonous gas. The humans had been very thorough in protecting their work. This left the aliens in an impossible situation. Their old technology was breaking down faster than they could fix it. Their new technology did not work, and human technology was designed to stop working if humans were not around to maintain it. The Galactic Council was meeting almost continuously now, but they were no longer trying to solve technical problems. Instead, they were arguing about whether to do something that would have been unthinkable just a few years earlier, using military force to bring humanity back. "We have tried diplomacy," declared General Vok Thor of the Krell Federation. "We have offered them everything they asked for. They refuse to be reasonable. Perhaps it is time to remind them of their obligations." "You are talking about war with Earth," said Counselor Rix nervously. "Are you sure that is wise?" General Vakthor pounded his massive fist on the table. "It would not be a war. Earth is just one small star system. We represent thousands of worlds and trillions of citizens. A simple show of force will make them see reason." Many delegates agreed with General Vakthor. They were desperate, and desperate people often make bad decisions. After centuries of thinking of humans as the galaxy's maintenance workers, they could not imagine that Earth might be dangerous. Speaker Vex called for a formal vote. All in favor of authorizing military action to compel human cooperation? The vote was close, but the military option won. The Galactic Council officially declared humanity essential to galactic security and authorized the use of force to bring them back. It was the worst decision they could have made. Building the invasion. Fleet took 6 months. Ships came from every corner of the galaxy. Massive Zenthari battleships, swarms of Krell destroyers, huge Vorthak carrier vessels. Even the smaller species contributed ships to what became the largest military force in galactic history. Admiral Sei Gextar of the Zenthari was chosen to command the fleet. He was an experienced military leader who had fought in several minor conflicts over the centuries. But he had never faced humans in battle, because humans had always been allies. "This should be simple," Admiral Gextar told his staff as they planned the operation. "Earth has no significant military. They never needed one because they relied on galactic protection. A show of overwhelming force will convince them to surrender immediately." The alien fleet was truly massive. Over 10,000 ships of all sizes. As it traveled toward Earth, Admiral Gextar felt confident that no sane person would try to fight against such odds. What the aliens did not know was that humanity had spent the last 4 years doing what humans did best when they were left alone, innovating, adapting, and preparing for trouble. Kite Lee had been a mid-level officer in the old Galactic Defense Forces. When humanity withdrew from galactic affairs, he had been appointed to head Earth's new Sol Defense Force. Most aliens would have expected him to build traditional warships and weapons, copying the designs that had been used in the galaxy for centuries. Instead, Kite had done something much smarter. He had asked human scientists and engineers a simple question. If we were starting from scratch, with no rules about how space warfare is supposed to work, what could we build? The answer surprised even Kite. Human technology had advanced incredibly during their isolation. Without the need to maintain compatibility with alien systems, human engineers had been free to explore completely new approaches. They had developed power sources that were 10 times more efficient than anything in the galaxy. They had created materials that were stronger and lighter than what anyone thought possible. Most importantly, they had learned to build ships that did not need hyperspace to travel faster than light. The new human ships used something called dimensional folding. Instead of jumping through hyperspace, they bent space around themselves, making the distance between 2 points shorter. It was faster than hyperspace, more reliable, and impossible for aliens to detect or interfere with. When Admiral Gextar's massive fleet arrived at the edge of the Sol system, they expected to find Earth defended by a few hundred outdated ships. Instead, they found something that should not have existed. "Sir," reported the fleet's sensor officer, "I am reading approximately 50 human vessels, but their energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases." Admiral Gextar studied the display screen. The human ships were small compared to his massive fleet, but they moved in ways that defied physics. They changed direction without turning. They accelerated without visible engines. They appeared and disappeared from sensors as if they were ghosts. "Open a communication channel," Admiral Gextar ordered. "Let us give them a chance to surrender before we demonstrate our overwhelming superiority." Kite Lee's face appeared on the main screen. He was now an admiral himself, though he looked much the same as he had 4 years earlier. Behind him, the bridge of his flagship was clean and efficient, with holographic displays that showed information in ways the aliens had never seen. "Admiral Gextar," Kite said politely, "welcome to the Sol system. I assume you are here on official business?" "Admiral Lee," Admiral Gextar replied, trying to sound confident. "By order of the Galactic Council, I demand that humanity return to galactic space and resume your previous duties. If you comply immediately, no one will be harmed." Kite smiled, sadly. "I am afraid that is not possible. Humanity has chosen independence, and we intend to keep it." "Do not be foolish," Admiral Gextar said. "You are outnumbered 200 to 1. Your ships cannot possibly stand against the combined might of the galactic fleet." "Perhaps," Kite agreed, "but I think you will find that numbers are not everything in warfare. Would you like to test your theory?" Admiral Gextar was about to order an attack when something impossible happened. His flagship, the mighty Galactic Thunder, suddenly lost all power. The lights went out, the engines stopped, and even the life support systems shut down. Similar blackouts spread through his entire fleet like a plague. "What is happening?" Admiral Gextar demanded. But his communication systems were dead. The human ships had weapons that the aliens did not understand. Instead of shooting projectiles or energy beams, they transmitted viruses directly into alien computer systems. In seconds, they had taken control of the entire invasion fleet. Kite's voice came through the emergency communication systems that the humans had temporarily reactivated. "Admir!" The destruction of the galactic invasion fleet sent shockwaves across the galaxy. For the first time in centuries, the alien species faced a terrifying truth. Humans were not the helpful servants they had always believed them to be. They were potentially the most powerful species in the galaxy, and they were no longer interested in helping anyone. In the weeks following the battle, desperate messages flooded Earth's communication networks. Planetary governors begged for help as their worlds fell into chaos. Trade unions pleaded for human engineers to fix their failing transportation systems. Medical organizations asked for assistance as plagues spread unchecked through space. But The most significant messages came from the highest levels of alien government. For the first time in galactic history, the proud leaders of ancient civilizations were asking for help instead of demanding it. Insu Park had been appointed as Earth's new Minister of External Affairs. His job was to handle all contact with the galactic community. Before the war, he had been a minor diplomat who specialized in trade disputes. Now he was the most important person in the galaxy, because he was the one who decided whether humanity would help or not. The requests that crossed Insu's desk grew more desperate each day. The Zenthari Empire, which had broken into 17 warring factions, sent messages from each group claiming to be the legitimate government and begging for human support. The Vorthak Collective's fractured hive mind sent confused communications that sometimes contradicted themselves in the same paragraph. But the most surprising message came from General Vakthor of the Krell Federation, the same military leader who had pushed for the invasion of Earth. "Minister Park," the message began, "I write to formally apologize for my role in the recent military action against Earth. I was wrong to believe that force could solve our problems. The Krell Federation humbly requests human assistance in preventing the complete collapse of our civilization." Insu read the message 3 times before he believed it. The Krell were the proudest warriors in the galaxy. They never apologized to anyone, and they certainly never begged for help. The fact that General Vakthor was willing to humble himself showed just how desperate the situation had become. But humanity had changed during their 4 years of isolation. The species that had once rushed to help anyone in need had learned hard lessons about gratitude and respect. They were willing to help, but only on their own terms. President Lee Sang-ho called a meeting of Earth's leadership to discuss how to respond to the alien requests. The meeting took place in the same United Nations building where the alien envoys had been politely rejected months earlier. "We have a choice to make," President Lee told the assembled ministers and advisors. "We can continue to ignore the galactic crisis, or we can get involved again. But if we choose to help, it must be different this time." Foreign Minister Kim Yun-ho leaned forward in his chair. "What do you mean by different?" "I mean we help as equals, not as servants," President Lee replied. "For 300 years, we fixed alien problems and then watched aliens take credit for our work. We built their cities and ran their systems while they treated us like useful tools. That cannot happen again." Defense Minister Choi Eun-jung nodded in agreement. "The military defeat sent a clear message. We are not weak. But we need to send an equally clear message about our political position. If aliens want our help, they must accept us as leaders, not assistants." Yoonji Choi, the brilliant political scientist who had been designing Earth's new foreign policy, presented her framework for the new relationship. It was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. "We call it the Partnership Protocol," Yoonji explained. "Any species that wants human assistance must sign a formal agreement acknowledging human authority in all matters related to the assistance being provided. If they want us to fix their hyperspace network, we control how it is designed and operated. If they want our medical help, we decide how treatment is distributed. If they want us to mediate their conflicts, our decisions are final." Minister Insu looked concerned. "That sounds very harsh. Are we not just replacing alien arrogance with human arrogance?" "No," Yoonji replied firmly. "We are not demanding that aliens obey us in all things. We are only asking for authority in areas where they have proven they cannot manage without us. They are free to reject our help and try to solve their problems alone." President Lee made the final decision. "We will offer help, but only to those species willing to accept the partnership protocol. Those who refuse can continue trying to solve their problems without us." The announcement of the partnership protocol created intense debate throughout the galaxy. Some alien leaders were outraged by the terms. Others, facing the complete collapse of their civilizations, were desperate enough to accept anything. The Newer Settlements Union was the first to sign the agreement. They were a group of smaller species who had always been dominated by the larger empires. Their representative, Ambassador Telka, traveled to Earth personally to negotiate the deal. "We have watched the great empires fall apart," she told Minister Insu during their meeting. "We do not want to repeat their mistakes. If accepting human leadership means our people survive and prosper, then we accept gladly the newer settlements." Union became the test case for the new relationship. Human engineers arrived at their worlds and began rebuilding their failing infrastructure. But this time, everything was done according to human standards and under human supervision. The results were dramatic. Within 6 months, the Union's hyperspace network was working better than it ever had before. Their food production systems were more efficient and reliable. Their medical facilities could handle diseases that had been killing thousands of people. More importantly, the humans made sure that everyone knew who was responsible for the improvements. Every rebuilt facility had signs in multiple languages crediting human engineering. Every successful medical treatment was documented as using human techniques. Every solved crisis was publicly attributed to human intervention. The success of the partnership protocol with the newer settlements union got the attention of other alien species. Suddenly, the terms that had seemed humiliating began to look reasonable compared to continued chaos and death, but some species were too proud to accept human authority. The Zenthari Empire's largest remaining faction, led by Emperor Kex Val, publicly rejected the partnership protocol. "The Zenthari will never bow to human superiority," Emperor Kex Val declared in a galaxy-wide broadcast. "We are an ancient and noble species. We will solve our own problems and restore our own glory." The Zenthari chose isolation over submission. They withdrew to their core worlds and cut off most contact with the rest of the galaxy. Within 2 years, without access to galactic trade and technology, they had reverted to pre-spaceflight conditions. Their great cities crumbled, their starships rusted in orbit, and their population fell by billions. It was a tragic end for one of the galaxy's oldest civilizations, but it served as a powerful example to other species. Pride was a luxury that few could afford in the new reality. The Vorthak Collective faced a different problem. Their hive mind had been so damaged by years of crisis that they could not make coherent decisions anymore. Different parts of their collective consciousness wanted different things, creating constant internal conflict. Dr. Haiwan Park, a human psychologist who specialized in alien mental health, was brought in to help diagnose the problem. What she found surprised everyone. The Vorthak hive mind was never natural, Dr. Haiwan explained to the Earth leadership. It was created artificially using technology they developed thousands of years ago. But the technology was breaking down, and they had forgotten how to maintain it. The humans offered to help repair the Vorthak consciousness, but only if the collective agreed to the partnership protocol. After months of internal debate that sometimes turned violent, the Vorthak finally agreed. Human technicians worked with Vorthak scientists to rebuild their mental connection systems. The process took years, but gradually the collective consciousness was restored. However, the new hive mind was different from the old one. It was more flexible, more able to handle disagreement and change. In many ways, it was more human in its thinking. The Krell Federation proved to be the most challenging case. Their military culture made it very difficult for them to accept outside authority. But their civil wars were tearing their civilization apart, and they were running out of options. General Vakthor, who had learned hard lessons from the failed invasion of Earth, became the leader of a faction that supported accepting human help. He faced opposition from traditional Krell generals who preferred to die fighting rather than submit to anyone. The internal Krell conflict lasted for 3 years. Human observers watched from a distance as the proud warrior species fought amongst themselves. Finally, General Vakthor's faction won, but at a terrible cost. The Krell Federation was reduced to a few dozen worlds, and their population had fallen by half. When General Vakthor finally signed the partnership protocol, he did so with a mixture of gratitude and sadness. "My people have learned that there are things more important than pride," he told the human negotiators. "Survival is one of them. The Krell will serve under human leadership, but we ask that you help us remember what it means to be Kura." 10 years had passed since humanity first walked away from the galactic stage. The galaxy that emerged from the chaos was completely different from the one that had existed before. It was smaller in some ways, as several proud species had chosen isolation over cooperation. But it was also stronger, more united, and more prosperous than it had ever been. Jae-Won Song stood on the observation deck of the new Galactic Cooperative headquarters, watching ships arrive and depart from the massive space station that orbited Earth. As Director General of the Cooperative, he was arguably the most powerful person in the galaxy. It was a responsibility he had never wanted, but had accepted when it became clear that someone needed to guide the new civilization they were building. The station itself was a symbol of how much had changed. Built using advanced human technology, It was 10 times larger than the old Galactic Council headquarters, but more importantly, it was designed to human standards of efficiency and comfort. The corridors were well lit and easy to navigate. The life support systems worked perfectly for all species. The communication networks never failed. Everything worked because humans had designed it to work and humans maintained it properly. Director. Song, said his assistant, a young Vorthak named Kilra who had been born after the cooperative was established. The morning briefing is ready. Jaewon nodded and made his way to the main conference room. The briefing covered the daily operations of a galactic civilization that now included over 3,000 worlds, trade reports, infrastructure updates, diplomatic news, and scientific discoveries, all of it flowing through Earth-based systems and managed by human-led teams. The most interesting item in today's briefing was a request from a newly discovered species called the Helix people. They were asking to join the Galactic Cooperative after observing its success from afar. They are a young species, maybe 500 years old, explained Dr. Minjun Lee, the cooperative's chief sinologist. They achieved spaceflight recently and have been very careful about making contact with galactic civilization. They say they have been studying our society for the past 3 years and want to apply for membership. Ambassador Telka of the newer Settlements Union, now serving as the cooperative's secretary for new member affairs, smiled as she presented the application. They have specifically requested to join under the full partnership protocol. They say they have studied the history of the old galactic system and do not want to repeat those mistakes. Jaewon was pleased, but not surprised. The partnership protocol had become the gold standard for interstellar cooperation. New species that encountered the Galactic Cooperative understood immediately that humans were in charge, and most were happy to accept that arrangement. The protocol had evolved over the years. It was no longer just about human authority in specific areas. It was a comprehensive framework for building stable, prosperous societies based on human values of hard work, innovation, and mutual respect. Member species kept their own cultures and traditions, but they also adopted human practices that had proven successful. Human languages were taught in all schools. Human engineering standards were used for all major construction projects. Human conflict resolution methods were used to solve disputes. Most importantly, human achievements were properly recognized and credited. No longer did aliens take credit for human work or treat human contributions as less important than their own. The transformation was visible everywhere Jaewon looked. The aliens working in the cooperative headquarters moved with confidence and purpose. They wore clothing that mixed their own cultural styles with practical human designs. They spoke in languages that blended their native words with human terms, for technical concepts that had no alien equivalent. But the biggest change was in how they thought about problems. The old galactic civilization had been reactive, always responding to crises after they happened. The new cooperative was proactive, identifying potential problems early and solving them before they became serious. This was a fundamentally human approach to management, and it was working better than anyone had expected. Dr. So-Young Kim, the engineer who had designed the quantum processing cores, was now the head of the cooperative's Technology Development Division. Her team included the brightest minds from dozens of species, all working together under human leadership to push the boundaries of what was possible. "We have achieved something remarkable," she told Jaewon during their weekly meeting. "Not just technologically, but socially. We have created a civilization where different species actually work together instead of just competing with each other." The proof was in the results. The new hyperspace network was so fast and reliable that travel between distant star systems took hours instead of days. Medical advances developed through interspecies cooperation had eliminated diseases that had plagued the galaxy for millennia. Agricultural techniques that combined human innovation with alien knowledge were feeding more people with less environmental impact than ever before. But perhaps the most remarkable achievement was the end of interstellar warfare. The Galactic Cooperative had not fought a single war in its 10-year history. Conflicts were resolved through negotiation, mediation, and occasionally economic pressure. Violence was seen as a failure of leadership, not as a legitimate tool of policy. This peace was not just the result of human military superiority, though the memory of Earth's easy victory over the galactic invasion fleet certainly helped discourage aggressive behavior. It was also the result of a new understanding of how cooperation benefited everyone. The species that had joined the cooperative were more prosperous than they had ever been before. Their people lived longer, healthier lives. Their economies were stable and growing. Their young people had opportunities that previous generations could never have imagined. The contrast with the species that had rejected the partnership protocol was stark and visible. The proud Zenthari Empire, which had chosen isolation over submission, was now a footnote in galactic history. Their core worlds were struggling to maintain basic technology. Their population continued to decline as young Zenthari emigrated to cooperative worlds where they could build better lives. A few Zenthari leaders had quietly approached the cooperative about joining, but they were still not ready to accept human authority. Pride, it seemed, was harder to cure than any disease. The Krell Federation had made a better transition. Under human guidance, they had transformed from aggressive warriors into respected peacekeepers. Krell's security forces now helped maintain order throughout cooperative space, but they did so with restraint and discipline that their ancestors would not have recognized. General Vakthor, now an old soldier nearing retirement, served as the cooperative's director of security. He had become one of humanity's strongest allies and advocates. "The humans taught us something important," he told new Krell recruits during their training. "Strength is not about how much damage you can do. Real strength is about how much you can protect and preserve. The strongest warrior is the one who wins without fighting." The Vorthak Collective had perhaps benefited most from the new arrangement. Their rebuilt hive mind was healthier and more flexible than the original had ever been. They had learned to value individual thoughts within their collective consciousness, creating a balance between unity and diversity that made them more creative and adaptable. Dr. Rix, the former Galactic Council member who had become the cooperative's chief philosopher, often wrote about the transformation. "We thought we were advanced because we were old," she explained in her latest essay. "We confused age with wisdom, tradition with truth. The humans showed us that real advancement comes from constantly learning and improving, not from blindly following ancient ways." But the most profound changes were happening among the young people. Children who had grown up in the cooperative thought of themselves as galactic citizens first and members of their species second. They spoke multiple languages fluently, understood different cultural traditions, and saw cooperation as natural and normal. Young humans who worked in the cooperative were proud of their species' leadership role, but they were not arrogant about it. They understood that leadership meant responsibility, not privilege. They had learned from their parents' experiences that respect had to be earned and maintained, not just demanded. Hei Young Lim had been elected as Earth's first galactic chancellor 5 years earlier. Now, in her 70s, she was preparing to step down and let a younger generation take over. But before she retired, she wanted to complete one final project, a comprehensive history of the transformation. "Future generations need to understand how we got here," she explained to her writing team. "Not just the events, but the lessons. What we learned about cooperation, respect, and the price of taking people for granted." The history project had become a massive undertaking involving historians from dozens of species. But the central theme was clear. The collapse and rebuilding of galactic civilization had taught everyone important lessons about how different peoples could work together successfully. The key was not treating anyone as naturally superior or inferior. Every species had valuable contributions to make, but those contributions had to be recognized and respected. The old system had failed because it had taken human contributions